The last thing I expected when I lost my keys at the Super Bowl was to find something I'd been missing for 4 years. But let me start from the beginning, because nothing about this made sense, and somehow, all of it did. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late January, and I was exhausted. Not the kind of exhausted that a good night's sleep fixes. I mean the kind that lives in your bones. The kind that follows you into the cereal aisle of a CVS pharmacy when all you came in for was Tylenol and apple juice for your 6-year-old who had been asking for it since 7 in the morning. Theo was beside me, holding onto the cart with both hands, steering it like it was a race car, his little Nike sneakers squeaking against the floor every time he turned a corner. He had Andre's eyes, big, dark, and completely unbothered by the world. I used to love that about Andre. Now, sometimes it made it hard to breathe. "Mama, can we get the Fruit Loops?" Theo asked, already reaching. "We have cereal at home." "That cereal is boring." "Boring cereal builds character." He looked at me like I had said something in a foreign language. I smiled despite myself, tossing the Tylenol into the cart and moving toward the juice section. That was when I heard him. Not his voice exactly, just a presence. The kind that makes the air in a room shift slightly, the way it does when someone walks in who is too comfortable in their own skin. I didn't look up immediately. I was reading the label on a bottle of apple juice because Theo had a thing about pulp, and I was not about to hear about it for the entire ride home. "Excuse me?" I looked up. He was tall. That was the first thing. Not in an intimidating way, just tall. Well-dressed without trying too hard, dark jacket, clean sneakers, the kind of face that looked like it smiled often. He was holding a basket with what appeared to be a protein bar, 2 bottles of water, and a family-sized bag of gummy bears, which told me absolutely nothing useful about this man. "Sorry to bother you," he said. "Do you know where they keep the cough medicine around here?" I pointed. "Aisle 4. Delcium is the best one if it's a bad cough." He raised an eyebrow slightly, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "You sound like you know from experience." 6-year-old, I said simply, nodding toward Theo, who was now trying to balance a juice bottle on his head. The man laughed, a real laugh, not a polite one. "Right, say no more." He nodded, started to walk away, then stopped, turned back around. "Can I ask you something?" I tilted my head slightly. "Your cart," he said. "You've got Tylenol, apple juice, those crackers, the pasta. That's like $40-something easy, and the line is long, and I don't know, would it be weird if I just—" "Yes," I said. He blinked. I haven't finished the sentence. "You were going to offer to pay." A pause, then that smile again, slower this time. I was going to offer to pay. I held up my left hand. Not rude, not aggressive, just clear. The ring caught the light the way it always did. Simple gold band. Andre had picked it out himself. Said he wanted something that looked like me. Nothing flashy, just real. The man looked at the ring, then back at me. Something shifted in his expression. Not embarrassment exactly, more like quiet respect.
"My apologies," he said, and he meant it. No awkwardness, no over-explaining, just 2 words, and he meant both of them. "Enjoy your gummy bears," I said. He laughed again, softer this time, and walked away. I stood there for a second longer than necessary. Theo appeared at my elbow. "Who was that?" "Nobody," I said. "He was tall." "Get in the cart." "Mama." "Theo." He climbed in, still looking in the direction the man had walked. I pushed the cart forward and told myself I had already forgotten about him. I had not forgotten about him. 3 days later, on a Friday morning, my car decided it was done. Not dramatically. No smoke, no explosion. It just stopped, right on the side of Meridian Avenue, 2 blocks from Theo's school, at 7:49 in the morning, 11 minutes before the bell rang. I sat there for a full 30 seconds, just staring at the dashboard like it owed me an explanation. Theo from the back seat. "Are we there yet?" "We're not anywhere right now, baby." "Is the car sleeping?" Something like that. I called the one person I trusted with car emergencies, my neighbor, Miss Patricia, who had a nephew who did mechanic work. She picked up on the 3rd ring, said he could be there in 20 minutes, and I exhaled. I was standing outside the car, Theo sitting on the curb eating the emergency granola bar I kept in my bag, when a black Range Rover slowed down beside us. The window rolled down. I already knew before I saw the face. Tall, clean, that same quiet ease. "You have got to be kidding me," I said, not to him, just to the universe in general. He looked genuinely surprised for a second. Then recognition crossed his face and he broke into a grin so wide it was almost annoying. "The CVS lady. The gummy bear man." He laughed. "Are you okay? Do you need—" "Help is already coming," I said. "You sure?" I'm sure." He looked at Theo on the curb. Theo waved at him with the granola bar. The man waved back, completely charmed. "He's got good taste in snacks," he said. "Goodbye," I said. Another laugh, warm, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world and found this entire situation genuinely delightful. "All right," he said. "You have a good one." The window rolled up. The Range Rover pulled away. Theo looked up at me. That was the tall man from the store. "Eat your granola bar." "Do you know him?" "No." "He has a nice car." "Theo, I'm just saying." Miss Patricia's nephew arrived 18 minutes later. I dropped Theo off at school with 4 minutes to spare, drove home on a spare tire, and spent the rest of the morning convincing myself that running into the same stranger twice in 3 days meant absolutely nothing. It meant nothing.
At one point, the Chiefs scored, and Theo absolutely lost his mind, jumping up and grabbing Joe's arm without thinking, and Joe caught him and swung him up like he'd known him for years, both of them cheering, and I sat there watching and felt something move in my chest that I quickly named indigestion and moved on. Halftime came. The lights shifted, the stage descended, the crowd buzzed, and then the screens around the stadium cut to advertisements, the way they always do before the show starts. I wasn't really watching. I was checking my phone, making sure I'd texted Miss Patricia back, when Theo said, "Mama, look, it's the medicine man." I looked up. On the massive screen above the field, in a full Super Bowl advertisement, was Joe Goldberg, standing in front of a hospital, white coat, stethoscope, looking extremely professional and nothing like the man who had just swung my son around celebrating a touchdown. The ad was through Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, something about a new cardiac unit. His voice was different in it, measured, authoritative, the kind of voice that made you believe everything was going to be okay. I turned and looked at him slowly. He was already watching me with an expression of pure, barely contained amusement. "No wonder you have so much medicine on you," I said. He said nothing, still watching me. "I genuinely thought you might be a cartel for a moment." He burst out laughing, the real kind, the kind that made the people around us look over. "A cartel." "A very polite, well-dressed cartel." "That is the most," he was still laughing. "A cartel, Leila." "You had a first aid kit in your backseat." "I'm a doctor." "I know that now. I did not know that on Meridian Avenue." He shook his head, still smiling. "Joe Goldberg, cartel member. I'm putting that on my hospital ID." "You're a doctor," I said, still slightly processing this. "Cedars-Sinai, cardiology department." I looked back at the screen where the ad was finishing, then back at him. "You did a Super Bowl commercial." "The hospital did. I just stood there and looked trustworthy." "You're good at that." Something shifted in his expression slightly, quieter. "Thank you." The halftime show started, and Theo dragged our attention back to the field, but something had changed in the air between us. The jokes were still there, but underneath them, something had settled, something calmer. About 20 minutes into the second half, during a timeout, Joe leaned over slightly. Not invasive, just present. "So what does Theo's dad think about him being a Chiefs fan?" The question landed the way those questions always do, like a stone dropped into still water, the ripples spreading out before you can stop them. I didn't say anything for a moment. Joe felt it immediately. I could tell by the way he went still. Theo was watching the field, foam finger resting on his knee, thankfully absorbed in something happening on the sidelines. "I'm sorry," Joe said quietly. Not pushing, not asking a follow-up, just sorry. I cleared my throat.
as one. I picked up my bag, told Theo we were going to move back to our original seats for the rest of the game. The gray hoodie man had long since disappeared entirely, and we did. Joe didn't follow, didn't call after me, didn't make it into anything. I appreciated that more than I wanted to.
We left before the final whistle. Theo had crashed somewhere in the fourth quarter, head on my shoulder, foam finger still on his hand. I carried him out through the crowd, bag on my shoulder, heart somewhere complicated in my chest. The drive home was quiet. I carried Theo inside, put him to bed still in his jersey because he would want to wake up in it. Came back downstairs, stood at the door, reached into my bag for my keys, reached again, turned the bag upside down on the kitchen counter. Wallet, phone, Tylenol, lip balm, receipts from 3 weeks ago, gum. No keys. I stood there for a very long moment. Then I went back outside to check the car. Not there. Checked my coat pockets. Not there. Stood on the porch and thought very carefully about every moment of the evening and arrived, slowly, at the image of standing up to move seats, the bag swinging, something catching the light briefly on the concrete floor. I sat down on the porch steps. I could call a locksmith. I could call Miss Patricia. I could... A car turned onto my street. A black Range Rover. I stood up very slowly. It parked. The door opened. Joe stepped out. And before he had even fully straightened up, I said, "Are you stalking me, Joe Goldberg?" He stopped, looked at me. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and held out his hand. My keys sat in his palm. I stared at them, then at him, then at them again. "They fell when you got up," he said simply. "I picked them up. Figured you'd need them." I walked down the steps and took them from him. Our fingers didn't touch. I made sure of it. "How did you know where I live?" I didn't. I asked the Stadium Lost and Found if anyone had reported missing keys. Described you. They said no. So I just... He paused. "Okay, I'm going to be honest. Your CVS receipt was attached to your keys. It had your address on the delivery order you placed last month." I looked at him. Maybe I am a little bit from the movies. Understandable. He put his hands in his pockets. "I'm sorry. About earlier. The question I asked. That was... It's fine. It's not fine. I overstepped." I looked at him standing there in the dark in front of his Range Rover and felt something in me that I had no business feeling. So I put it somewhere safe and locked the door. "Thank you for the keys," I said. "Of course." I turned toward the door. Stopped. Turned back around. Because the thing about walls is sometimes you build them so high even you can't see over them anymore. "Joe." He looked up. "In case I lose my keys again," I said, "you should probably have my number." The smile that crossed his face was slow and genuine and entirely too much. "For the keys," he said. "Obviously." He held out his phone. I typed in my number, handed it back. He looked down at the contact, then back at me. "Good night, Leila Monroe." "Good night, Joe Goldberg." I went inside, leaned against the door, heard his car pull away. From upstairs, Theo's small voice. "Mama? Go to sleep, baby." A pause. Then, "Did the tall man bring back your keys?" I looked at the ceiling. Go. Cue. Sleep.
3 weeks passed. We texted. Nothing dramatic. He sent a meme about the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl the morning after. I sent back a photo of Theo still wearing his jersey to school. He replied with 3 crying laughing emojis, and then, "That kid is everything." He asked how my cough was. I said better. He said good, and that Delcium was still the best option if it came back. I said I knew that. I was the one who told him about Delcium in the first place. He said touche. He asked if Theo was doing okay. I said yes, he was fine. He had moved on from the Super Bowl and was now fully obsessed with a cartoon about dinosaurs. He said he used to love dinosaurs. I said everyone loves dinosaurs. He said fair point. It was easy in a way I had not allowed anything to be easy in a very long time, and that scared me more than anything. Then, on a Thursday morning in February, I woke up and the world was tilted. Not metaphorically. I mean, I stood up from bed and the room moved sideways, and I sat back down and waited for it to stop, and it did not stop. My temperature was 103. My chest felt like something was sitting on it. I made it to the bathroom, then to the hallway. Then I don't actually remember the next part clearly. I remember Theo's voice, high and scared, the way children sound when the adults in their life suddenly stop being okay. I remember telling him to get my phone. I remember calling Miss Patricia next door. I remember her coming in and her voice changing, the way voices change when they see something is really wrong. The ambulance came. The last thing I remember before they wheeled me out is Theo standing in the doorway in his dinosaur pajamas, holding his phone finger like a talisman, and Miss Patricia holding his shoulders, and his face, God, his face, trying so hard to be brave. "I'll be okay," I told him. He nodded. He believed me. I needed to make sure he was right. I woke up to white ceilings and the particular hum of a hospital at night. IV in my arm, monitors beeping at a pace that suggested I was, in fact, still alive. Severe pneumonia, they told me later. My body had been fighting it for over a week without me fully realizing. I lay there in the quiet and thought about Theo. Miss Patricia had texted that he was fine, fed, and had only cried for a little bit before falling asleep. I held on to that. I was staring at the ceiling, trying to remember if I had told Miss Patricia where the spare school clothes were, when the door opened. Joe walked in. Not in a gray coat or a game day hoodie, in a white coat. Stethoscope around his neck, hospital ID clipped to his chest. Cedars-Sinai. He stopped when he saw my eyes open. Something moved across his face quickly that he controlled just as quickly. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I said. My voice was rough. He came to the side of the bed, checked the monitor, checked the chart hanging at the foot of the bed. Professional, calm, then pulled the chair close and sat down. "Pneumonia," he said. So I heard. "You waited too long. I had things to do." "Leila." "I know." I looked at the IV in my arm. "Is this your ward?" "It is now," he said quietly. I looked at him. "I'm not your attending," he clarified. "Dr. Reeves is. He paused. "Miss Patricia called me. She found my number in your phone under Keys Guy." Despite everything, I almost smiled. I should change that. Probably. Silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable. Just real. "Theo okay?" I asked. "She says he's fine. Ate 2 bowls of cereal and is watching the dinosaur show." I nodded. Exhaled slowly. Then, without planning to, without deciding to, I said, "His name was Andre." Joe went still. "My husband." I was looking at the ceiling. "He died 4 years ago. IED in Afghanistan. He had been deployed for 2 years when it happened. Theo was 2. He never really..." I stopped. Breathed. "He never really knew him. He knows his face from photos. He knows his name. But he doesn't..." I pressed my lips together. "He doesn't know what it felt like to be held by him."
Joe said nothing. He was just present. Entirely present. I looked down at the ring on my finger. He made me a promise before he left. He said, "I will never leave your side. Not really." I turned the ring slightly. I know what he meant. He meant it spiritually. He meant it the way soldiers mean things when they're trying to make the people they love feel safe. My voice was steady, steadier than I expected. But I've been holding on to it like it was a contract. Like if I keep wearing the ring, then he kept his promise. Like he's still... I stopped. Joe leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "I'm not asking you to let go of him," he said quietly. "I would never ask you that. He was Theo's father. He was your person. That doesn't have an expiration date." I looked at him. "I'm just asking you," he said, "to let me in. Not instead of him, not to replace anything." He held my gaze. "Just in." The room was very quiet. I looked at the ring, then at the door, then back at him. And for the first time in 4 years, I didn't have an answer ready. I didn't have a wall up fast enough. I just sat there, in the quiet, with the question. It was the most honest I had been in a very long time. 2 days later, Theo came to visit with Miss Patricia. He walked in very carefully, the way children do in hospitals, like the floor might be different from regular floor. He was carrying a drawing he had made, me, apparently, in the hospital bed, with what appeared to be a very large sun above me and a figure beside the bed that had a stethoscope drawn in purple crayon. I looked at the figure. "Who's this?" "Joe," Theo said simply, "because he fixes people." I looked up. Joe was standing in the doorway, having walked Miss Patricia and Theo in. He caught my eye and gave a small shrug that said, "I have no idea, he just drew it." Theo climbed carefully onto the edge of the bed and showed me the whole drawing in detail. The sun was to make me feel better. The purple crayon was because it was his favorite. And the reason he drew Joe was because, and I quote, "He was there when you were sick before, and he gave you the medicine, and I think he'll keep giving you medicine." The logic of a 6-year-old. Clean and devastating. Joe crossed the room and crouched down to Theo's level, studying the drawing very seriously. "You drew my stethoscope perfectly," he said. "Are you sure you're 6 and not in medical school?" Theo giggled. "I'm 6. Could have fooled me." Theo looked up at him with those dark Andre eyes. "Are you going to be my doctor forever?" The room went quiet in the way rooms do when something true gets said out loud by someone too young to know how heavy it is. Joe looked at Theo, then at me. I looked back at him. And then he smiled. Slow, warm, completely unguarded, and said, "I'm working on it."